Hello everyone, and welcome to our global webinar with Deloitte Consulting, where we will be looking at Connected Planning Framework written by Ron Dimon. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to the Q&A box in the console. But for now, I will hand over to Ron, who will be presenting this today.
Many thanks, Laura, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar. Yes, as Laura mentioned, my name is Ron Dimon. I'm a Managing Director of Planning and Analytics at Deloitte Consulting out of Chicago, Illinois. And I'd like to take the next 40 to 45 minutes to walk through a framework for connected planning that many of our clients have embraced or are on the journey of, and show you connected planning as a process and sort of talk about some best practices along the way. So why don't we just go ahead and jump into it. A little bit background about myself. I've been working in the area called Enterprise Performance Management for about 18 years. For my entire career, working on finance systems and processes since the late 1980s. I wrote a book about my experience and about this framework we're about to see called Enterprise Performance Management Done Right. Also very excited to be with you today to talk about what some of the value is that our clients are getting out of this idea and notion of connected planning. So let's get started. What is connected planning? Usually when I do a presentation like this, I start talking about why are we having this conversation? What's the pain? What's the problem? But I know a lot of you on the phone live and work this every day. Just the sheer amount of manual labor and mechanics that go into budgeting, planning, forecasting, reporting, and analytics. Just the lack of visibility in some areas of the business, or the concerns that your business partners have about how to adapt quickly to rapid change in the business. So all of those issues and concerns that you have in your day-to-day life get addressed with thinking about connected planning more holistically. So that's what we're going to attempt to do. And we're going to start with the first connection in connected planning, which is thinking about value and what your organization is up to. So every business is a little bit different depending on the industry you're in, the marketplace, and the sort of maturity of your organization. But typically, most organizations are about some sort of profitable revenue growth, operational efficiency, improving asset utilization, engaging and utilizing the workforce better, customer satisfaction or innovation. So whatever those strategic objectives that you're up to as a company is where you start in connected planning. And the first connection is connecting that strategic objective or targets or the value you're trying to create with sustainable day-to-day execution. How do you realize that value that you're trying to create? We're going to talk about some major processes in connected planning. And the first one is this notion of enabling a debate with the organization to answer the question, what's possible in those strategic objectives that you're up to? How fast can you profitably revenue grow? How much profit can you take in the business in this quarter, given your current product portfolio or service portfolio, given your customer base, the market you're in, economic indicators, your other capital and resource availability. So one of the first things that organizations do is build a model that tries to answer that question, what's possible? That model is both financial and operational in nature. It includes things like drivers of value in your business. So what are some of your key value drivers? I'll talk about that in a second, including historical data that you have accumulated over the years and possibly even external data. So we're thinking about trends in sales and revenue growth, trends in spend and capital allocation, and what some of your competition might be doing or what your customers are doing. So buying signals, demand plans, things like that. And what we try to do is take the key financial and operational drivers, historical data, external information, and build as close to a model of reality to your business as we can. So let's talk a little bit about what some of those drivers are. And they're typically organized by business function. So I'll quickly draw out a few common business functions. And of course, your organization will be different. Certainly there's customer operations, there's product development and innovation, there's IT, legal. Certainly there's a lot of other functions, but let's just pick on four today, four common ones that we see with a lot of clients: sales and marketing, supply chain, HR, and finance. And to talk about some of the drivers that inform and build these models, they are specific to a business function. So in sales and marketing, it's volume and pricing and your channel efficiency and sales rep productivity and things like open headcount, average selling price, all of the key drivers of value in sales and marketing. In supply chain, it could be on-time delivery or your inventory levels or overall supply chain efficiency, raw material costs, and partner efficiency. In HR, it's certainly a big place for driving value in many organizations. What's the current headcount and workforce look like? How long does it take to hire and fill an open headcount? What is employee productivity engagement look like? And then finally in finance, where I do a lot of work, it's in all of the P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow items are key drivers of value, some more than others, and you'll know what they are in your organization. So we take those drivers and we build out that model and we say what's possible. If we happen to ramp up our cash availability or restructure our debt or acquire new businesses, what's the impact on those overall value drivers that we're up to as an organization? So we start to ask a bunch of what-if questions. What if we acquire? What if we shore up our product line? What if we hire new levels of people at new rates in new geographies? So all these what-if scenarios help us debate and hash out what the business should look like this year, 3 years, 5 years from now. And so here we're talking about long-range planning and strategic planning and this what-if modeling. What happens in a connected planning world is that typically there's a process of debating what the right levels are, enabled by some system, supported by all that data and drivers that we talked about, to get to a point where we select the model going forward so that we all agree on this is what we think is possible, this is the right level of revenue growth and margin attainment. And that model that we agree on should generate and inform the targets for our day-to-day work. So here we're talking about all of the budgets, plans, and forecasts that we do. Again, both financial and operational in nature. So we take those targets, maybe they're sales targets, cost targets, hiring targets, capital expenditure targets, and we answer the question, who is going to deliver those targets by when? Using what products, in what channels, and in what geographies. And we typically then cascade those targets down throughout the organization. So some organizations do it from the top down, some do it from the bottom up, some do both and meet in the middle. There are a variety of different planning methods for annual operating plans, for your rolling forecast, for your sales plan. Maybe you do zero-based budgeting and start from the ground up. However you cascade throughout the organization or consolidate throughout the organization, we have to make sure that our connected planning environment is multidimensional in nature, meaning it can handle multiple geographies and hierarchies around your geography, multiple products or channels, and multiple business units. So if we go back to our chart about looking at it by business function, we think about some of the plan types that happen in each of these areas of the business. For example, in sales and marketing, it's your sales forecast, your territory and quota plan, maybe your incentive comp plan. In supply chain, demand plan, or your inventory plan, your raw materials plan. In HR, it's certainly your workforce plan, maybe also training plans, succession plans, and comp plans and benefit plans. And in finance, it's the overall annual operating plan. It could also be your CapEx plan or maybe even project planning. So you can see how plans are divided by business function, and eventually they all need to come together and support those targets that we said we were going to deliver. I mentioned that as you cascade your plans, it's done by dimension, by the way I think about it is when you speak to people in your organization about how you like to look at the business, and they'll tell you, I like to look at it by customer, by channel, by product. So those customer, channel, and product items are the dimensions of the business. And I think in 2017, connected planning can exist because the technology supporting it is so robust that it can handle many more of these dimensions than we were ever able to handle in the past. But it's also good to know what your dimensions are, where they live, and how they inform the more granular level of detail in budgeting and planning and forecasting. We have a client that's a large international brewing company, and they do this level of planning right down through the supply chain by product group, and then into customer channel, and then by geography and territory. So they're very good at having a look at the business in several different ways and dimensions. And I imagine pretty much everybody on this call does this same or similar kind of thing, or is attempting to do that. And then we consolidate the plans from the bottom up to get to the top of the house plan. And invariably, something happens at one of those business units or product categories or geographies when we've sent them the targets to deliver on. We get to learn about some constraint in the lower level of the business that we hadn't known about before, sitting in FP&A or in finance or at the executive level when we're sending out these targets. In connected planning, we want to capture those constraints, and we want to feed them back into our models so that we get better at making sure that we expose the assumptions in our model, and we get better at learning about some of those constraints. For example, maybe there's a price constraint in a particular geography. I can't sell my product at the average selling price level because I have additional competition that we don't have anywhere else in the country. So I want that geographical competitive impact on price to be learned and contained in my models, and so that the next time we go through this process of setting targets, we're smarter about it. And then what happens is off we go and we execute on what our business does. We make products or deliver services to customers in channels, through our employees, at each of these dimensions. And that's going to generate a ton of data, more so than ever before. In sales and marketing, it's all of our CRM data or contract data or pipeline data. In the supply chain, it's our supply chain management data or product lifecycle management data or quality data. HR, it's just everything that gets generated in our workforce systems and our HR systems. So open hires and benefit plans and all of the details about our workforce. And in finance, it's everything that shows up in the general ledger and subledgers and treasury and tax systems and just all of the different finance systems. So we're generating all of that data, and what connected planning wants us to do is to gather it up in some useful format, so to turn that raw data into some usable information and be able to visualize it through a series of reports, dashboards, scorecards, interactive reporting where we make sense of the data and show what the variance to our plan looks like. So this answers the question, where are we right now? And there's a couple of ways of looking at it. One is in the management reporting level of the business, internally what the business looks like, and then externally what our statutory reporting should look like, and the differences between the two, which may include transfer pricing and intercompany eliminations and currency conversions. So to keep those two at bay, so we use them for different purposes. So the point of connected planning is to include those key visualizations and reports that we use in the business so that we can keep track of variance. For example, in sales and marketing, it might be variance to quota or to coverage or to customer sat. In supply chain, it's all of our delivery reports or stockouts or all of the things that we care about that we said we were going to do and what we actually did. In HR, it's all of our cost change, it's our open head count, it's our variance to plan for hiring and speed to hire. And of course, in finance, it's both management and statutory reporting up and down the P&L and balance sheet. what happens when, as an organization, we deliver those visualizations and reports and dashboards is our customers, our internal users, want to drill into the details. They want to answer the question, why did we get what we got? They want to understand why there might be variance in any one of these areas, both good and bad. When we miss a number, when we're underperforming, we want to know the root cause and try to fix the problem. When we overperform, we want to find out what went well and what we did better and take that into other areas of the business. So we do that through a series of financial and operational analytics. And again, it's very much a key component of connected planning because it answers the question, so what? Why are we doing all of this planning? It's to try and predict the future, see how we're actually doing, and then find out where we can get better, where we can improve, or where we should exploit benefit from. And we also hope that in this process of analytics, where we look at trends and benchmarks and maybe external comparisons and root cause analysis, that we want to get some new insight about our organizations. You know, maybe there's a product profitability insight we get from analytics that helps inform us about what we should be selling more of or less of. Again, as I mentioned, through trends, benchmarks, root causes, and other algorithms, which we'll talk about in a second. So when you get this insight about the business, typically you want to go back and focus a little bit more on how you're visualizing it. So if I have a new insight that says, when I sell product X, I always attach so many dollars of service Y. So I want to find out if that's true in all product and all geography and all areas of the business. So maybe I want new visualizations that specifically focus on product profitability or product margin by those dimensions. So I get better and better at visualizing what makes a difference, what moves the needle, as they say, in our organization. And I think the other part about connected planning, where things are going in the future, is more around predictive analytics. So this is using statistical and stochastic techniques that take all of our historical data, external data, seasonality, and other rules about the business and help us predict what to expect going forward in our forecasts. So let the data and the systems do the work for us in coming up with a best fit for what could possibly happen going forward. There's a large high-tech company in the San Francisco Bay Area that uses a connected planning technology for 30,000 of its sales reps to manage and predict territory and quota plans. So using predictive analytics, the best fit curve shows what to expect at a higher level of accuracy than having sales reps and sales management input territory and quota plans and actuals on their own. So the organization gets to use the data to get smarter and more predictive about where to steer the business, where to assign resources, where to fix problems, and where to exploit benefits. So we talked about everything starts from trying to create some benefit, some value in the organization, and then proving what's possible, building models to exercise and work out and debate what the right levels of performance are in the organization. And once we've settled on and agreed on that right model going forward, that model informs our budgets, plans, and forecasts, which are cascaded down through the organization and then consolidated back up to the top of the house. In that consolidation process, new constraints are learned about the organization, and those get fed into the model. And then we go off and execute and deliver value to customers, and that generates a ton of data that we want to visualize in a meaningful way and compare to what we said our plan was, so we can look for hotspots of under and over performance, and then drill into the details and understand why we got what we got and get some new insights about the organization. And when we get those new insights, we go back up into what's possible and we remodel the business based on these new insights. So we get to answer the question, what's next, knowing what we know, knowing our current business environment with our current products and our current customers. So what connected planning, what's different? I mean, many of our clients and many of the organizations I've worked with over 25 or so years is they're doing each one of these sort of cornerstones of connected planning already. The problem is most of them are in isolation from the other cornerstones of this connected planning framework. And a lot of it's just run off of spreadsheets. Sometimes it's useful and fast and flexible to build those models and plans and reports and analytics off of a spreadsheet. But always I'm lacking governance, and I'm lacking auditability, and I'm spending a lot of time on manually consolidating and troubleshooting and tying out these spreadsheets. So I generally lose control over the one version of the truth that I'm looking for in my organization. What connected planning does is brings all of these cornerstones together. So I'll just draw this in the middle, and connects each of the technologies and processes. Sorry, I've gone a little too far in my slides. I'll just get back to where I was. So bringing all of these things together in the middle lets us do some things that we hadn't done before and that I can't do with disparate systems in Excel. So here we're talking about connecting all of the users that care about this connected planning or decision framework to each of these cornerstones so that everybody's looking at the same data and the same master data, meaning the hierarchies and roll-ups of our organization when they're doing that model and when they're doing that plan and when I'm reporting against that plan and then analyzing that plan. So I get to look at apples to apples hierarchies and roll-ups. I get to look at apples to apples results. I get to believe in the numbers because they come from one version of the truth and the planning system of record. The way I transform the data, so when I define what revenue is in planning, it's the same rule and definition that I use for when I report against revenue in my reporting section. And they get to use common workflow for approvals and requests and promises and insights throughout the whole ecosystem of connected planning. One organization that I've worked with that does a really good job of this is a multinational conglomerate. They had a hard time, as you can imagine, with disparate kinds of businesses, different business units that have different business models, and trying to govern the master data around that, because product might mean one thing in one business unit and it might mean another thing in another business unit. So bringing together and governing that master data centrally where it makes sense, and then distributing the management of that master data to business units where it makes sense is all part of connected planning so that we can be singing off of the same sheet of music. Usually when I talk to clients about this whole ecosystem around connected planning with all of the cornerstones and the types of users that consume and contribute to connected plans, we want to find out, well, where do you get started? It looks like a lot of work. We can talk about all different kinds of budgets, plans, and forecasts, from zero-based budgeting and SG&A all the way up to a rolling forecast for sales and revenue, top-down, bottoms-up, any kind of hybrid budget plan and forecast. In all of these business functions, you are quickly asked the question, well, where do you start? How do you get started with this connected planning platform? And there's two ways I like to look at it. One is, what is the ease of implementation in each of these functions for each of those plan types? Meaning, how quickly can we get to value? Do we have the data? Do we have the right resources to help us integrate the data into a connected planning platform? Do we have the will and desire, especially from our IT organization, to help out the business unit to deliver on this connected planning process? So where is it easiest to do? And then most importantly is, what's the value to the business in doing a connected planning use case or implementation in each of these functions? So for example, if we're doing rolling forecasts in sales and marketing, the business value is typically a lot higher or a lot more material than if we're doing something like succession planning or training planning. While still important, it doesn't have as much of a material impact as doing a better job or improving our sales and margin efficiency in our selling and marketing organization. So we walk through each of these business functions and each of the plan types and assess what the potential business value is, assess what the ease of implementation is, and very quickly get to a prioritized list of use cases to start bringing into this connected planning platform, for example. The other thing I like about the overall connected planning message is the notion of going outside of the four walls of our company. So everything I've talked about now today is typically around our own internal functions. But what would it look like if you were to bring outside constituents into your planning and modeling and reporting and analytics process and governance? Imagine if I had vendors helping to inform my supply and demand plans, or if I had customers talking about what they'd like to do in the coming months and quarters right in our planning system. So the voice of the customer in our plan system gives it new level of credence. What if I invited my channel partners or my network or however else I use external constituents to grow my business? What if they participated directly and in real time in my connected plans? And even things like the gig economy and external workforce, maybe talking about availability or rates for the variable workforce right into my planning system. I'd have new levels of visibility that I hadn't had before, and possibly even new levels of accountability where I could hold accountable people in my ecosystem that wanted to improve our speed to overall value. Just a couple of other sort of comments about what clients are doing in this area. In the what's possible section, in the financial and operational modeling area, there's a very large oil and gas company that does a great job of scenario planning. So they'll deliberately sit down and use a connected planning platform to build out those drivers we talked about in historical data and external econometric data, and sit around and try to debate what happens if, one of their current examples is, what happens if the world goes to zero emissions? What happens to our business? What business are we in? What products do we deliver? What does the workforce look like? What's our go-to-market plan? So it helps them exercise the muscle about trying to predict the future, and also improves readiness for when those predicted futures come to pass. So let's say we do get to zero-based carbon emission globally. They will have ready at hand a workforce plan, a product plan, a supply chain plan, all of the different plans that they need to execute to deliver on that new reality. I think it's one of the most underserved areas of connected planning, is to, again, build that discipline of asking the business and all sorts of constituents inside your organization, not just a select few, about what they predict could happen and how to get ready for that in a connected planning environment. The other thing that we've noticed in connected planning, at least in most of my North American clients, is that this whole cycle is speeding up. The request to get to faster, more granular, or more insightful plans is ramping up quickly. I was with a high-tech company yesterday, and they attempt to change the business on a dime, reorging hierarchies, moving product groups from one hierarchy to another, moving sales territories around, moving the workforce with it. So what does the business look like when you make those changes? So to have a connected planning platform that addresses rapid master data and hierarchy changes is a great way to start to look at the business today, tomorrow, what you predict it will look like in the future. And some are even going back into the past to look at comparables based on new hierarchies and architectures to find out how good their decision-making ability is, how good their resource deployment capabilities are. So in a nutshell, that's the framework for connected planning. It's a journey that most clients are on, and as I mentioned, some are doing pretty well in different pockets. Some are really great at reporting and visualization. have a large Fortune 500 agribusiness company in the States that's quite good at getting down to weekly financial reporting, GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, versus internal management reporting, understanding the differences between the two, exposing to the right level of detail, distributing interactive reporting across the organization, and also rapidly being able to include acquired companies in that whole look at the data. So very, very good look at where they are right now, but not so much on the where do we want to be as a result, not so much on the connected planning capabilities and muscle. And that's where they're focusing their time and energy on now. So everybody's a little bit different places in the journey. As I said, the modeling is an area ripe for exploitation in this connected planning platform. I also love this idea of bringing together, I was going to say dozens, but maybe it's half dozens of different disparate planning systems that are in your organization. You'll have one in FP&A and one in supply chain and one in workforce plan, and they don't talk to each other. So imagine bringing them all into one platform where you can see the impact of new hires on a supply chain delivery plan in next year in an instant. Always rolled up, always consolidated, and always integrated in real time. So I get to learn more about how resource deployment decisions make an impact right across the business. Laura, that's the bulk of what I wanted to present, and I'd like to see if we could open it up for any questions if they're online through the webinar, and take the rest of the webinar by addressing some of our participants' specific questions.
Hi, yeah. So one of the questions that's come through is, what title do you typically see quarterbacking the planning process in your customer base?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah, sorry, did I say that a bit fast? What title, I'm guessing this is job title, do you typically see quarterbacking the planning process in your customer base?
Oh, so very good. So yesterday I was with a group of FP&A folks in the large tech company. So financial planning and analytics is the group that it typically lives in, and so there's usually a director or a VP of FP&A that lives in finance that tries to drive this whole message. Usually, the numbers come back to finance, and they're owned by finance. So they're trying to serve other parts of the business. So you'll have a supply chain planning executive and a workforce planning executive and a price planning executive, and they'll all rely on finance to drive this one version of the truth. So it's typically that I see more often than not, maybe 80% of cases they live in finance. Sometimes in some organizations, depending on how they're structured, I see it living in IT of all places. IT traditionally, a keep the lights on organization and an infrastructure organization is becoming more and more business savvy and takes on more ownership around driving value out to those organizations, as well as centralizing control on data and master data and metadata. But most of the times it's VP of FP&A.
Cool. And the next question was, who has seen success using this framework from an operational kind of standpoint?
Yeah, we have a number of clients that are doing a much better job of supply chain planning using a connected planning approach and environment. So we have a client in the Midwest of the States that it's an $18 billion, without giving it away, I'll just have to say supply chain company. That's very quickly was able to take 7 days out of inventory by shoring up this master data and connecting it to other plans of other parts of and plans of the organization. So certainly in inventory and managing demand and integrating sales and operations planning. So S&OP is a big area ripe for connected planning, and bringing it into the fold of financial planning better, bringing it into the fold of workforce planning better, and even things like CapEx planning. So there's another area that's ripe for connected planning is capital expenditures. What do we say we're going to invest and build this year? What's the expected return? How does that impact our workforce? I have one client that does a lot of driver-based planning, and the number of new hires directly informs their real estate plan 3 years in advance. So they know what they need to start working on from a capital expenditure point of view now in order to fulfill real estate demands in the future. Hopefully that answers the question more.
I think it did. We've got a couple more questions. One is, identify one cause of disappointment when organizations start with the best of intentions with connected planning and then the output falls short.
That's a brilliant question. So there's a couple of things I've noticed. One is, first of all, there's a fatigue in many organizations of undertaking ambitious plans of bringing together all kinds of planning, budgeting, and forecasting in one place. So it is ambitious, and you really do need leadership at the top to drive that agenda. And so I'll give you a quick example. I was speaking about that at global agribusiness company. Before they embarked on this journey, I was fortunate enough to sit into some of their quarterly operations reviews. And that's where they sit down and review product performance, customer performance, price performance, and the whole P&L for the quarter. What's working, what's not working. And the meeting lasted 2 hours, and I expected this to happen, so I timed it. And the first 45 minutes were spent on where did you get these numbers from. So different constituents in the quarterly operation review would pull up an Excel spreadsheet or a PowerPoint or some other system that they use, a shadow IT system, to present their numbers. And there's so much debate that ensues about, well, I don't believe your numbers, or you didn't transform these right. You're using the wrong foreign currency exchange rates. That's not including these adjustments that we talked about. So there's too much arguing around that, and you need that executive leadership, like at this agribusiness, to say, we are no longer going to conduct a quarterly business review on your numbers. We're going to conduct them on our connected planning system numbers. So they fire up one system, they walk through one set of numbers, and everyone's prepared to explain and defend and understand the same set of numbers. So it wouldn't have happened if it didn't come from the top down like that.
Thank you. And we've just got a couple more, actually. What is the best way to gather transactional data that is in multiple ERPs, such as Oracle, SAP, etc.?
So I'm a consultant, so I always get to say it depends. But the top 3 ways that we've seen to do that, one is through a data warehouse, which is, I think, less and less in. It's getting a little bit out of favor because of the sheer amount of time it takes to build and maintain and prove and tie out a data warehouse. They're very ambitious projects, and they can span so much time that by the time they're live and done, the business has changed enough. There's new data sources from acquisitions, or there's new requests for alternate hierarchies and things like that. So data warehouse is common, and less being started from scratch. Data lakes are a little bit more prevalent, where there's less requirement for structure on the inbound of the data, and we let the technology help structure the data. So it's a pretty new area of exploiting this notion of repository and transformation of data. The other most popular one that we see is the use of a data hub in an OLAP tool. So I'll just try to explain what that is. It's a multidimensional database. We like them better now when they're in memory and in the cloud. That lets us take disparate dimensions of the data and put them together in one place that all of these planning applications and analytic applications can draw off of. And it just makes life a lot faster and quicker to one version of the truth.
Excellent. Just 2 more questions now, because you've answered quite a few. We had quite a few live ones, and really good. what is the industry trend in terms of managing and controlling data to support integrated planning?
Well, the one trend I just mentioned is this move to the cloud, and I fully embrace and support that. There's so much less effort and money spent on infrastructure or on my clients being in a business that they don't need to be in. And there's a lot, I mean, imagine trying to get external constituents into your plan if you own your own infrastructure. The security around that is a nightmare. So relegating that to cloud providers is a boon to increasing more connected planning. I think that's the first thing that I think of when I do that. The second is on the data integration side. So there are a variety of tools that do a pretty good job of integrating from the cloud to cloud, from cloud to on-premise, on-premise to on-premise, and that whole hybrid mix of infrastructure. And hybrid is a key word. We see that all over the place. We'll see on-premise general ledgers and cloud-based planning systems talking to each other because of these modern integration tools and ETL tools that has really changed how we're able to adopt to the cloud.
Oh, great, thank you. And just one last question, which I guess is it's a bit of a subjective question, so you can answer it if you'd like to or not, Ron, but someone has asked, what does the business case look like to justify the connected planning program?
It's such a good question. So usually when I talk about that very first circle on the whole journey to connected planning, the one around creating business value, we drive into the business case for each part of this whole journey. So we'll look at the business case for zero-based budgeting. That's a great example. There's a number of clients that have started to embrace this methodology that was designed in the 1970s and sort of fell out of favor because it was just too hard to do. The notion of zero-based budget is blowing out your prior year numbers when you're ready to budget, starting from nothing, like it says, starting from zero, and rationalizing every line item in your detailed budget plan and forecast, or at least your budget and plan, maybe not your forecast. So you're doing a zero-based plan and you're rationalizing every line item. That's going to require a lot more textual information for backup detail, some more line item detail to rationalize the line. And when you're done building up a zero-based budget, which is a lot quicker now because of these connected planning systems, we weren't really able to do it in the past with some of the older technology. Then you quickly see, for example, SG&A spend is a great one. You get to see what the right level of spend is. So you're no longer selling general and administrative expense levels just because you did it this way in a prior year, plus or minus some sort of percent increase. So starting from zero, we've seen a lot of companies get some major benefit out of their cost structures. So that's a good one. The other side is on workforce. We see a lot of rationalization for roles and heads in roles and open head counts in areas of growth. So starting to move the business hiring plans to align with sales and marketing and supply chain efficiency and all sorts of other product quality and product development plans. So a lot more rationalization there. But I think having this target, this performance target from a business case in mind as you embark on this journey is a great way to enroll leadership and to keep people accountable for what they're trying to deliver in a connected planning solution. So I would say the business take is key.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ron. I think we have just about run out of time to answer any more of your questions, but we appreciate them nonetheless. And thank you for listening and tuning in today. A recording will be made available to all those that attended and those that didn't, and I'm sure to get that to you in the next few days. Ron, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just good luck on your journey. Look into some of the connected planning platforms that are out there. Start to think about all of the different areas in the organization you plan on and help generate this vision that I just presented, I usually do all across the organization simply on a whiteboard, and it helps people align on this new way of working. And thanks very much for attending.
Thank you, everybody. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our global webinar with Deloitte Consulting, where we will be looking at connected planning framework written by Ron Dimon. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to the Q&A box in the console. But for now, I will hand over to Ron, who will be presenting this today.
Many thanks, Laura, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar. Yes, as Laura mentioned, my name is Ron Dimon. I'm a Managing Director of Planning and Analytics at Deloitte Consulting out of Chicago, Illinois. And I'd like to take the next 40 to 45 minutes